Hello, my dear students. Today's new theme, the political system of Great Britain. Today's new words, overseas relations, the European Economic Community, Commonwealth, to be the responsibility, permanent member, to abolish, voluntary, to promote, sustained, defense policy, membership, to commit. The legislative power. The parliament consists of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. House of Lords consists of 5,000 peers, hereditary and life peers. The members are not elected, presided by the Lord Chancellor. House of Commons consists of 650 members, elected for a period of 5 years, can make any law for the whole United Kingdom. The chief is the Speaker. The Queen reigns but doesn't rule. The Queen's duties: the head of the judicial, the chief of army, the head of the Commonwealth, the temporal head of the Church of England. Now, let's watch the video about how does the United Kingdom Parliament work.
In the United States, we're used to governmental power being divided between separate branches under the principle of separation of powers. The UK, however, operates according to the principle of parliamentary sovereignty, which means that all the power of government is vested in Parliament. So if we understand Parliament, we understand the government. To start, the Parliament of the United Kingdom is bicameral, meaning it consists of two separate houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. We'll get to both, but for now, let's talk about the Lords. The House of Lords is made up of unelected, lords. No, not those lords. Yes, those lords. Meaning citizens who either inherited their title via family ties or by royal appointment. The size of this house isn't set in stone, and as of 2015 at least, has 778 sitting members. In the distant past, the House of Lords had relatively significant power and could introduce, amend, or reject bills, and acted as the official Supreme Court. Today, though, the Lords retain only their ability to introduce bills or delay them. Think filibuster. In 1911, the Lords were stripped of their right to amend and reject bills. Then, more recently, in 2009, the judicial power of the Lords was also replaced by the creation of a separate Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. Now, let me digress just a bit to say, don't get fooled by the sound of Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. Here in the States, we're used to a powerful Supreme Court that can overwrite laws it doesn't like. This is distinctly not what the UK Supreme Court does, because that would violate the whole idea of parliamentary sovereignty. In the UK, the Supreme Court is only the court of highest appeal. It does not have judicial review powers. Now, where were we? Parliament. Okay, now let's move away from the House of Lords and talk about the House of Commons. The Commons is, without a doubt, the most important governmental body in the United Kingdom. It's made up of 650 elected representatives called MPs, which is just a nifty abbreviation for Member of Parliament. And each MP represents one of the 650 electoral districts in the UK. The Commons is led by the Prime Minister, who is both the head of government and the leader of the majority party. With only a few caveats, the House of Commons is the body responsible for introducing, voting on, and enacting policies. Its power is only checked by the threat of a delay from the House of Lords, or a highly unlikely veto from the Queen. And by highly unlikely, I mean it hasn't been done since 1706 unlikely. So with this much power, how is the House of Commons elected? As mentioned before, each MP represents an electoral district, where they're elected by plurality. This means that to win an election, candidates only need the highest number of votes, but not necessarily a majority. So for example, if Red gets 40% of the vote and the next best candidate gets 30%, Red still wins, even without 51%. And, unlike in most countries, elections in the UK do not occur on a strict schedule. Instead, the House of Commons has to call an election when they deem it necessary. They're allowed to call an election essentially whenever they want, the only caveat being they must do it within 5 years after the last election. When an election is called, citizens only vote for their local MP in the House of Commons. Unlike presidential systems, citizens don't directly choose the Prime Minister. Instead, whichever political party wins a majority of seats in the House of Commons is allowed to form a government. When a new government is formed, the winning party's leader becomes prime minister, and its highest-ranking members become cabinet members. During an election, each party makes its shadow cabinet public. That is, a list of who they'll put in power if they win the majority. So voters know who will be prime minister and, say, secretary of justice before they go to the polls. So all of this leaves a burning question. What happens if no party wins a majority? This scenario is called a hung parliament, and in most cases, the most successful party will form a coalition government with one or more other parties by agreeing to compromise on some of their positions and share some of the power among them. This happened in the 2010 election, when the Conservative Party came in under a majority and formed a coalition with the Liberal Democratic Party. Under this arrangement, the Prime Minister was a Conservative, but the Deputy Prime Minister was a Liberal Democrat, and the Conservatives agreed to hold votes on the important Liberal Democratic issues. Now, after all this talk about Parliament, you might be asking yourself where the monarchy fits into all of this. Well, to start, the Prime Minister is the head of the government, but the monarch is the official head of state. It's also technically the job of the monarch to appoint the Prime Minister. Even though it's solid convention that the head of the majority party will step into the job, this power can still become important in a hung parliament. If no party is willing to form a coalition, the Queen may be forced to intervene and declare a Prime Minister to force compromise. The monarch is also responsible for signing bills into law, and technically holds the power to declare war, although most all-important decision-making is left to Parliament by convention. So, in summary, the United Kingdom is governed almost singularly by the House of Commons under the principle of parliamentary sovereignty. Members of Parliament are called MPs and are elected by plurality in each of the 650 electoral districts sometime around every 5 years, though not at set intervals. After an election, the winning party elevates its shadow cabinet into governing positions and its party leader becomes Prime Minister. The House of Lords is unelected and can delay legislation, but has almost no real power. And finally, the Queen acts as head of state and has substantial reserve powers, but abstains from using them.
Now, your homework is answer the questions. First, what can you say about Britain's diplomatic status? The second, what's the role of Great Britain in the work of the European Community? The third, what's the European Community? The fourth, what's the Commonwealth? The fifth, who is the head of the Commonwealth? Our lesson is over. Goodbye.